these discussions. Another question, please.
Hi, yeah, I'm Hamad Abu Hawash. I'm a senior at Georgetown University. And my question is to Mr. Douglas Murray. And before I ask my question, I just want to say, you said no sound bites, but then you said the developing world cannot move to the developed world. I don't know what that's about.
I said it before.
My question is, since you brought up migration from the developing world, I'd like to ask you this. Every year, the developed world sends about $300 billion of aid to the developing world, but the developing world sends back trillions in debt repayments to the developed world. Now, don't you think that this is the main reason why migrants are moving to Europe? Because money is moving out of the developing world. Wealth is leaving the developing world and moving to the developed world, to build on what Lamont Hill said. Don't you think this is why people are moving to the Western world, to the developed world?
Well, no, I don't. Again, I repeat the fact there are no simple answers. And if it was simply the fact that you could, I don't know, do a debt default or something and solve the whole migration issue, then that would be great. But it just isn't the case. You think that if for instance, all African countries were allowed to default on debt, that they'd become burgeoning, flourishing societies? You think that the problem across, for instance, sub-Saharan Africa isn't just unbelievable greed and theft by politician after politician? You think that if you just wrote off the debt, that would stop being an issue and everyone would become transparent and clean in their dealings with money? I mean, the problems are much deeper than this. They're much deeper than just a simple solution like that. As, if I may just add quickly to the previous two comments, that
Okay, I just want to stop it there. I want to rewind this section, folks, because you probably saw it, but I just want to rewind it in case you miss it. I don't see how you could have. But watch Douglas's expressions. His finger twitching on his face, his eyebrow twitching. I just want to go over that because he is ready to absolutely pounce. He does not like the way this kid came after him, this student, and said, oh, you know what? You didn't want to talk about any sound bites, but then, you basically came out and said, the developing world, okay, can't move to the developing world. What do you think that is? And Douglas's eyebrows just twitch. I thought his head is about to freaking explode. Let's go back and see that all over again, and then we'll continue with Douglas's answer. Okay, so we're going to go that cut right now.
Discussions. Another question, please.
Hi, yeah, I'm Hamad Abu Hawash. I'm a senior at Georgetown University. And my question is to Mr. Douglas Murray. And before I ask my question, I just want to say, you said no sound bites, but then you said the developing world cannot move to the developed world. I don't know what that's about.
I said it before.
My question is...
So here, watch this, okay? You just have to watch it. This finger just goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, or whatever. Look at his eyebrows. Look at the eye contact. I mean... He did not like the way that kid, and listen, that's perfectly fine. That kid comes out, okay, you know what? You got to do a little give and take over here. Douglas, you got to understand that. But he does not like the way this is starting right off. That's just, okay, Doug, you got to continue on. Let's see. Anyway, let's watch together.
Since you brought up migration from the developing world, I'd like to ask you this. Every year, the developed world sends about $300 billion of aid to the developing world, but the developing world sends back trillions in debt repayments to the developed world. Now,
look at his eye twitch.
That this is the main reason why.
Look at his finger twitch.
Because money is moving out of the developing world. Wealth is leaving the developing world and moving to the developed world, to build on what Lamont Hill said. Don't you think this is why people are moving to the Western world, to the developed world?
Well, no, I don't. Again, I repeat the fact there are no simple answers. And if it was simply the fact that you could, I don't know, do a debt default or something and solve the whole migration issue, then that would be great. But it just isn't the case. You think...
I just wanted to play that over again because I just thought that was so funny. And he was so perturbed and so put off by the question. And like I said before, that student, I mean, he acted respectfully. He didn't act, in terms of that. But he came out and, hey, listen, that sort of could be a soundbite. There's no doubt about that. So anyways, give props to the kid for asking the question. Give props for Doug to answer the question. Because like the kid was saying, don't you think that's the reason? Because of all these loans, people want to leave? People just want something better. If they can see it on the other side of the mountain, the other side of the ocean, the other side of the desert, they're going to try to go there. The world is always going to try to go to the West. That's what most of the people in underdeveloped nations, that's what they're trying to do for the most part, whether it's for economic disparity, whether it's for food disparity, whether you want to, okay, climate disparity, whatever you want to call it, for better education, for safety, for security, whatever the reasons. People want to move to someplace where they can feel safe and raise their families. And if that's in the West and other countries, that's where they want to go. The question becomes is how can the people in the West, Western countries, how can we absorb the refugee crisis, the migrant crisis, the illegal alien, invasion crisis? How can we absorb all of that and then not lose the identity of the country that is trying to absorb all these refugees? That's the big question. Anyways, let's continue on with Douglas Murray's answer to this young man's question.
Think that if for instance, all African countries were allowed to default on debt, that they'd become burgeoning, flourishing societies?
No
you think
way!
The problem across, for instance, sub-Saharan Africa isn't just unbelievable.
Take a look over here now. This is the young Iranian woman who fled her country as a refugee. She's really, I think she's awestruck by the way that, Douglas Murray is answering this question. And, in her part, when she was talking, I think she aligns a lot more with Douglas Murray than she does with Mark Lamont Hill. Anyways, let's continue with Douglas's answer.
Greed and theft by politician after politician. You think that if you just wrote off the debt, that would stop being an issue and everyone would become transparent and clean in their dealings with money? I mean, the problems are much deeper than this. They're much deeper than just a simple solution like that. As, if I may just add quickly to the previous two comments, the late, very distinguished American diplomat Daniel Patrick Moynihan had a wonderful rule he came up with, known as Moynihan's Law, where he said that human rights, claims of human rights violations often happen in exactly inverse proportion to human rights violations. That is, you hear about them in the countries that are most free. And before long, you can end up with the presumption that the most free countries are the ones who are most abusive of human rights. And this happens with the case when we talk about our leaders and the ones, it's all very well. We can talk about the Trump administration, we can talk about the democracies and so on for all we like. We can all make criticisms, and we all should.
Now this kid, see, he doesn't like the answer that he's getting from Doug, and Doug is absolutely brilliant in his response right here, folks. Brilliant. He basically says that Daniel Patrick Moynihan's law is that the more you hear about human rights violations in a place, the less they are. And the less you hear about human rights violations occurring in a place, you can bet your bottom dollar that the more there are. And so when you've got news that travels around the world and you say, the United States, Donald Trump, human rights violations. Donald Trump was the only person that stood up for the Uyghurs, the Muslims in China, where they've got 2 to 3 million that are basically in concentration camps. The Muslim world, 54, 55, 56 countries that claim to be Muslim. Did they even lift a finger for their Muslim brothers and sisters that are incarcerated, imprisoned, that are being killed, that are being, a genocide is being put upon them by the Chinese government? You want to talk about human rights violations? What about that? But all you hear about is, the United States, the West, the human rights violation that these Westerners are putting out is unbelievable. When most of the human rights violations are going around in the third world countries, for crying out loud. Going on in Africa, going on in the Middle East, going on, in China, in other countries around the world. Sub-Saharan Africa, in Egypt, you name the country that's out there, there are tremendous amounts of human rights violations going on. But it's easier to pick on, Orange Man and Trumpsters and people that support Trump and Republicans and conservatives. And then basically minimize the fact what's going around the world with dictatorships and how the way that they are incarcerating and keeping their people locked up. But this kid did not like that answer at all. Anyways, tough! That's what we say, tough. Let's get back to Douglas and his answers.
But, okay.
Briefly.
Mr. Putin.
There
what are
you
you gonna
go.
do about him?
Yes. What are you going to
about the
do?
mullahs in Iran? What are you going to do about the House of Saud in Saudi Arabia? You see, what we end up with is this situation. We go, oh, Mr. Trump, Mr. Trump. We can all do that. Believe me, I can riff on
But
Trump
again, you're being
all
quite
day.
selective, aren't
What
you?
are you going to do about the people you can't do anything about? Are you going to ignore them? Are you going to give them a pass? Or are you
there's
just going to
something
enjoy beating up on the democracy?
I hate to have to interrupt you. There's something called democracy, though, isn't there? Elections.
For sure.
Well, so if the mansplain it to this lady moderator when she says, oh, there's some things like democracy. Yes, there's democracies. That's why they have elections. And elections have consequences. Elections matter. And so they elected Donald Trump in 2016. And guess what? His administration is in charge. And that's just what we can control. You can control who you elect in your country. You don't have much of a chance of controlling elections, and we shouldn't be controlling elections in other parts of the world. We should be worried about our part, the Western part of the world. And if it so happens that you've got a new government that's formed, new administration, new ideas, but then to come inside there and say that that administration is racist, is bigoted, it doesn't like, refugees or asylum seekers, or they're trying to keep everybody out, or that the supporters of these people are white supremacists, that is absolutely lies. And you can use that rule that Douglas brought up about Daniel Patrick Moynihan. The more you talk about something, the less of it's occurring. The less you talk about something, you can bet your bottom dollar that the more of it is occurring. Anyways, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your guest host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, like, share, and follow us. Let us know what you think. Check out our video links above and below. My final thought, as always, is when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.